Fellas, welcome back to our final segment. We head off the field and we're going to talk House of the Dragon and a full season recap. We've been talking about it each week that the show has been on. It wrapped up with a finale of season 1 last week. Oh, God, Gerber, you're the worst. The finale last week gave us the start of the Dance of Dragons and any pretense of Rhaenyra and Alicent reaching an agreement and finding peace got eaten by Vhagar. So, what'd you think about the finale, Chuck?
I love the finale. I love the way the dragon. Well, it wasn't really much of a fight, but the way the stalking happened, I thought it was really well done. I loved everything. Like I don't find a lot of fault in this season 1 of House of Dragon, but I thought it was really well done to set up season 2, like like an oh shit moment that you're used to from Game of Thrones, where everybody's just shocked. I wasn't shocked. I was waiting for it to happen, but I didn't think it would happen that abruptly. I guess with just one bite. Spoiler alert. But overall, like it was a great episode. Really well done. It's like, oh, don't like you knew it, right? Like we knew it. Like don't send the young one, don't send the kid out there. And then the one guy, whoever they sent him to, like, did you notice like that dude can't even read? Like he can't read.
Yeah. Lord Baratheon.
Yeah, whatever it was. Like this guy
Where's
can't
the
even,
maester?
All I heard was Adam Sandler, like Billy Madison voice, like I can't even read.
I do feel like Rhaenyra is at a disadvantage because like her kids are like queens trying to go fight a war, and like you got Aemond on the other side is like has a grown-ass man killer. It's just really not fair. Phil, what do you think of the finale?
I love the finale. The one equalizer there is she's married to Daemon, who is the baddest of badasses, and he wants a war so bad. And you saw it that whole episode. Like he just wants a war. We were forced to watch another just awful childbirth scene. They got to stop with this shit, man. Like,
yeah.
And I watched it a second time. I'm like, what am I need to fast forward this. But even during that scene, the whole point was Daemon did not leave the painted table and was like, all right, we are preparing for war here. I don't care what's going on with my wife and whatever's happening over there. It's time for war. So I love the episode. I think like, the choking thing was weird too. Damon's episode was very strange, but clearly he wants war. The one thing I thought about though, after watching it a second time, wasn't it pretty cool how they lit up the painted table? That was pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's great. And why didn't the guy from
Stannis?
Game of why didn't Stannis know?
He didn't realize you could light candles under it. That's the problem. He was so
he lit a lot of people out of fire, specifically his daughter.
He
should have known.
Right. He was too distracted by the witch.
That's
true. He didn't realize he could light up his table.
She was like his medium to get to like the Lord of Light. That seems like the perfect guy to light up the table. Like, why didn't the Lord of Light come in and be like, hey, you know what would be really awesome is you can just put some candles under here and like the whole thing will light up. Now, granted, it is like 100 years later. Maybe
they don't have candles years later.
I disagree a little bit with Phil though about the choking thing. Like that's him, man. Like he's not a good dude. And so when people were kind of shocked that he did that, I'm like, have you watched this season, specifically the first couple episodes of it?
I wasn't shocked that he did it. It was another uncomfortable scene. Like,
yes,
oh, man.
Yeah. But my favorite part though was when like, not on camera. But my favorite part of like the Daemon thing was because I laughed out loud because when the Queen That Never Was came and kind of said, here's what's going down, and he's like, you love Viserys, right? Like this guy's been dying for 20 years. His limbs are falling off. He has half a face. And Daemon's like, they murdered my brother.
He was slain.
Dude.
Like, slain? Dude was falling apart.
Are you sure? Pretty clear that Daemon from the jump wants to have a war. I think what's really interesting about the episode is that I still think Rhaenyra was hesitant because she's got like her dad's blood in her, and her dad felt like his greatest accomplishment was keeping peace in the kingdom throughout his entire reign. And so she's hesitant to do it. I think her reaction when like Daemon chokes her is really interesting. I expected her to just like attack him back, you don't fuck with Rhaenyra, like she's pretty bad. But her reaction was I think kind of surprising. But I love, it's such a typical Game of Thrones thing that the story turns essentially on an accident. Like Aemon is not trying to kill Rhaenyra's son, man. It's just his dragon who he can't really control, because none of these guys can really, in the end, control their dragons. They're wild animals. That dragon takes it on itself to do that, kills the kid, and Aemon knows, man. Aemon knows that that's a big problem. Like, he is not happy when that happens, but it's such a Game of Thrones thing to have things get worse based on something that's like out of your control or unexpected or something like that. I thought that was a really cool part of the finale, and seeing Daemon do Daemon things like we have all season, and there's probably a lot more to come from him in the coming seasons. Let's take a look at some House of the Dragon clock management. Who made the worst in-game clock management decision during season 1? In episode 5, Rhaenyra dumps Sir Criston Cole on the boat before her fake wedding to Laenor Velaryon. Episode 9, Princess Rhaenys chooses not to burn all the greens at Aegon's coronation. Episode 10, Rhaenyra taking her time to do anything after she's learned of the king's death. If nothing else, that allows Aemon to get to Storm's End first. Episode 1, and maybe the ultimate one, Viserys naming Rhaenyra his heir when he should know that he would have to remarry and there was a chance that he would have sons in the future who could be heirs. So, which clock management decision was the worst during season 1 of Game of Thrones? Phil? Game of Thrones, you dipshit. During season 1 of House of the Dragon.
That's a really hard question to answer, because if Rhaenys burns down all of the greens, the show would suck. The book, and the book would suck.
Don't look at it. Don't look at it like that. You got to look at it in terms of like winning the game.
Oh, I understand
House
that.
Of Dragons.
I thought they did a good job though in episode 10 with her explaining why she didn't do that. Like, it's
Perfect.
not my war to start. It's not my war to start. Okay. I think she might have ended it all in one fell swoop there too. But so mismanagement of the clock with those picks, that's the one that in hindsight has the biggest, I guess, issue, right? Because all these people are still alive and you're about to have this enormous war. But I don't know. Like, I think in episode 10, like the caution that Rhaenyra continued to just lead with, which was much like her father, it just led them to being one step behind in situations where they didn't have to be. And then I guess, again, it's all in hindsight. Like, I feel like that was mismanagement of the clock. And the only thing that turned her around was the very last scene, because she learned that her son was killed. Like, that was it. Like, up to that point, she was not ready to go to war, even though the war was coming to her.
Chuck?
I'll start at the beginning. I think that's the biggest mismanagement. The series, he didn't want to be king, ended up being king, and then everybody in the 7 kingdoms knew, like, don't name your daughter, don't do that, man. There's no lady queen. Nobody should rule over if they have a vagina. So I guess it all started there, where he just couldn't go, let's just wait a little bit to name a successor. But yeah, made for a fantastic season, but ultimately led to most of the issues.
Yeah, listen, I get that we don't want any of this to change, because it's been fantastic. It's going to entertain us for probably the next 8 years as they get through the next 3 seasons. And, taking 2 years off in between each one. So we're going to be in our 50s when this show is over. So it's going to be really entertaining. But just for the sake of like playing the game, I thought about Viserys naming Rhaenyra, but he really was like in a kind of like a rock and a hard place in that situation, because he at that point Daemon was a complete loose cannon, needed to have an heir. He couldn't not have one. So it's kind of a tough spot there. Think about all the bad shit that's happened to Rhaenyra after she dumped Sir Kristen Cole. That guy got all bitter and now is, very solidly like Team Green. I really think it's Princess Rainey's choosing not to burn everybody. I think she goes in, she kills everybody at that coronation. Her explanation to anybody who asks her is they were all committing treason. It was actively committing treason. Everybody knew the king had named Rhaenyra as his heir. She gets to be the hero, the queen who never was, saves the throne for the first queen ever. I think in the long run, that would have been a lot better. It certainly would have been a lot better for the Targaryens in the long run, because as you'll see as the show goes on, as a house, they are significantly weakened by fighting against each other for that whole time. So I'm giving it to Princess Rainey's in episode 9, not just killing everybody, which was the easiest thing to do when you have a dragon. All right, award time. The Robin Arryn Breastfeeding Prince Most Uncomfortable Moment Award. Do you think people will get that, or is that too obscure?
People who have watched.
Yeah.
Okay. It's good. My other one was the Theon loses his main man. Most
Also,
that's
good.
All right. So, episode 1, Most Uncomfortable Moments. The king chooses the birth of his heir over his wife's life. Episode 3, I didn't even remember this until I was going back this weekend. In episode 3, the king floated the idea of Rhaenyra marrying her 2-year-old half-brother Aegon. Episode 4, House of Pleasures, Daemon, Rhaenyra. I don't think we need to go into more details on that one. Episode 9, what else? Larys Strong and Queen Alicent's feet. So what was the most uncomfortable moment of the show for you, Chuck?
Even though it all worked out in the end, it's the House of Pleasure stuff, man. Like, it just made me super uncomfortable. Then, like I said this earlier, like how we were repulsed by the Lannisters, but people think that the Targaryen incest is hot. I'm not one of those people, so I'm just gonna stick to that and walk away from it.
That one was the most uncomfortable of those choices for me as well. I think I forgot about the whole marrying a 2-year-old, and at that point, it was, they didn't pursue that, and there were other things happening, like him marrying a 12-year-old. I think that was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot of stuff that didn't make the list. It's potentially there.
But the House of Pleasures was very uncomfortable at that time, because you were looking at a Princess Rhaenyra that was 14, maybe, I think.
Yeah, she's still a teenager for sure.
Yeah, 14 though, like barely a teenager. And her uncle, and that was hard to watch.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Although I still think the first episode, when the king is given a choice between a male heir and his wife, and he chooses the heir, and his wife dies, man, that's just brutal. Then the kid dies too, and so he's left with nothing. That's really hard. That was if you remember, it's just a visually very difficult scene to get through, and it was right at the beginning of the show, right in that first episode. That would be my vote for the most uncomfortable moment. That was hard to watch. So the fight is on. It's between the Greens and the Blacks, between Alicent and Rhaenyra. Is there a good side and a bad side to this, Chuck?
I don't think so, man. It's gray. It's gray to me. They tried to usurp her way to the throne, I guess. So that's the bad side. But it's not like there's no fault on the other side as well, which I guess is why I like this show. I think they're all bad guys. There's no good guys anywhere on this show, or good women, to be honest. So no, yeah, like that's probably the best part of this series to me, is like you pick a side, or they want you to pick a side, and you can see you can see both sides are pieces of shit, but ultimately I'm going to have to decide at some point, and then they're all just going to die, I'm assuming anyway. So I'll be good in like when we're 50 something, right, when the show's over. So yeah.
It's interesting because, Allison thinks she's doing the right thing. She really does believe that the king told her that Aegon needed to be on the throne. Now, everybody behind her, Otto and, the rest of the small council, those guys were all fucking terrible. But Allison is, at least has some shred of like decency in her idea for like what's going on. I don't know. Phil, is there a good side or a bad side?
I don't think it's that clear cut, but if I had to lean one way, and there is no good side. Like I'm gonna lean toward the blacks, but there's some crazy shit going on that side for sure. But the reason I would lean that way is kind of what you were just saying, Gerbs. Like they're taking advantage of something an incoherent man muttered in his dying moment as his body was just disintegrating before our eyes, as opposed to something he made a conscious choice and presented to the entire kingdom when he was mostly able-bodied and of sound mind in choosing his daughter as the heir. So if I had to lean one way, I'm going to go to the blacks, because that was the Viserys choice that everyone said they were going to get behind.
So Chuck, who are you going to root for in season 2? Black or green?
Black.
I think we're all black. I think that's the way it's set up. I think it's set up for you to root for Rhaenyra. She really is like the main character in the show, and even if she is flawed, I mean, listen, she's broken like every rule that the princess was supposed to follow to become the queen, and that's really where part of Allison's trouble lies. Is everybody knows Rhaenyra's kids aren't Targaryens. Everybody knows they're bastards.
Well, they're half Targaryen.
Yeah, which half? Certainly not
half.
their hair. Not their hair. That's all it needs to be. It
Her
all
half.
comes down to the hair in this show. So I think the show is set up for you to root for Rhaenyra. But I don't know, man. Like, Rhaenyra is on the side with Daemon. And Daemon is a bad, bad, bad dude, man. There's no doubt about that. He killed a wife just because he was sick of being married to her. That's no good. You can't do that.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I don't think there are no good guys or bad guys in this show. I think everybody is equally bad, and what the show is about is how bad will you get to have power? And that's what we're going to see in the coming seasons. But I guess for right now, I'll root for the blacks. We'll see what happens in season 2 sometime in 2024. All right, so bourbon scale for House of the Dragon season 1. Phil?
I'm assuming 5 is the top end, and I'm going to go 5 on that. Yeah. I've really enjoyed this season. I've simultaneously gone back and continued to rewatch Game of Thrones. I'm through season 3 of Game of Thrones, so I'll watch that a little bit in between. And it's interesting. Like, they've done a really good job this season in picking up the Game of Thrones feel, but completely telling the story the way it's completely different. Like it's just a different pace. It's a different story arc. Of course, there's less magic. There's less all sorts of things. And they've done a really good job. It's a compelling story. And I'm going to have a hard time waiting until 2024 to watch the next season of this. You got to be kidding me.
Chuck?
I'm at a 4.5. I don't think it's perfect, but there were certain things about this season that to me were perfect when I watched it. The last episode, and you mentioned it earlier, Gerb, because you didn't have that in Game of Thrones. You thought all dragons just did whatever you told them to do. And then you forget that these things are monsters. I appreciated that aspect of it in the last episode. And some of the, like, not even storyline stuff, like the cinematography was gorgeous, even though it was dark at times. Like might have been a little too dark.
Way too many
But
dark
but,
things.
but
Yeah.
there were things about this season that were just perfect. So I'll give it a 4 out of 4.5. Man, like it's some good bourbon.
Yeah, I think I'll go all the way to a 5. No show is perfect. It's impossible to tell these stories without having to change them a little bit from the book or leave stuff out from the book because they're just not humanly possible to put it all down on screen. But I was wildly entertained every week. There might have been only like one episode that I didn't think was really good and wasn't really entertaining. I'll absolutely revisit it and watch the season again. And I'm really looking forward to what happens in the coming years. You know, I think they solved the problem that Game of Thrones had in how they handled how long it takes for everything to happen. The way they did the time jumps was really, really good. And I think if they keep that going for the entire series, you won't feel rushed, but you won't feel um, like it's dragging on or there are dull episodes or something like that in there. So I'm giving it a 5. Why not? House of the Dragon. Well done on you.